Hi class, Mr. Watlington, and we're back for week 5. Guys, we did a great job in week 4. As we move into week 5, we're going to have a lot of fun. We're going to get into really a very serious topic, especially in today's cybersecurity threat environment, the dangers of social engineering. Okay, let's get into this. All right, so when we look at Module 5, what are we working on this week? Well, we're going to look at our learning objectives and really look at some of the human-associated vulnerabilities, a fancy way of saying, insider threat and social engineering. And you're going to articulate an informed position on contemporary issues of privacy. Basically, you're going to write a paper. Now let's take a look at this module at a glance, okay? Some of the things you're going to do, like we do each week, you're going to complete your knowledge check as well as review your module resources. And this week, actually, you've got 2 things to do. You got your Project 3 milestone on social engineering, and you have your Project 1 to complete, which is your privacy perspective textbook. We're in Chapter 13, Legal and Privacy Issues in Information Systems. All right, so if we look a little bit deeper into these assignments, like I say, so the first one that's due this week is the Project 1 that's due. Okay, so you're going to use your Project 1 scenario, that same scenario we've been working through all along, and be sure to look at the guidelines and the rubric. Try to hit those rubric points because that is what really drives the grading and how I'm going to assess your work is based on the rubric. So remember, more isn't always better. I'm looking for not just content, but context to see that you understand the material. Second thing is our Project 3 milestone due this week. Like I said, we're going to use the Project 3 scenario. The same thing. Work through your guidelines and the rubric. Be sure you follow your formatting. Okay, big thing. I know a couple of the students in class, we kind of lost some easy points, what I call easy points, on formatting. So be sure that your papers are formatted in accordance with the rubric. Read that little statement down there where 12 pitch, double space, and things of that nature, and you got the right formatting. Now, next week, just getting your prep, next week, Project 2 is going to be due. So when we look at Project 2, actually, you're going to continue in that role with Fit Vantage Technologies, and to be sure what you're going to do, prepare a legal and ethical recommendation to address some of the privacy protections and data security strategies. So just a look at this week and also to get you prepped for next week. Okay, so this week, like I said, we're really getting into what we call social engineering. Guys, I will tell you, social engineering is really one of the biggest threat that we have in our cybersecurity community with protecting people's not only confidentiality, integrity of information, but also personally identifiable information, your PII. So when we think about social engineering, and I know I went over this week 1, but just a refresh, social engineering is the art. I love that word, art, because it is. People who are able to influence you isn't just a science, it isn't just a skill set, it's an art of manipulating, influencing, or deceiving you in order to gain control over not only your computer system, but any of your personal assets. It's not just limited to computers. Okay, and how will these influencers, these hackers do this? They can use the phone. It could be email, just regular mail, direct contact. So many different threat vectors are there for them to try to gain access to your personal information, excuse me, your privacy information. Now, when we think about social engineering, typically it is some type of reconnaissance attack. What do I mean by that? When you think about recon, if you think about military, and when you go do reconnaissance, you're trying to gain information so that it gets you an advantage, so that you can launch some type of other attack. Normally, social engineering isn't the end; it's the means to the end. So when we think about it from a reconnaissance perspective, many times, especially when it comes to espionage and things of that nature, someone is trying to use you in an organization to be able to get there, to get into the larger system. It's not just about what you have or what you know, it's the accesses that you have many times that they are trying to exploit. And they do that many different ways. And when we talk about some of these ways, it could be phishing. I say what phishing is, we all have got these emails where they want you to click on a link or something. And I will tell you, they're getting more and more knowledgeable on how to do these phishing emails to where they look so real until it could possibly deceive the very elect. But yes, they are getting more and more astute because the technology is getting better. AI, artificial intelligence, machine learning is helping this process. Now, phishing, usually that's just you're casting your line, you're casting your net out there, they're trying to catch whoever they can. However, we'll have another one we call spear fishing, right? When we think about spear fishing, now that's targeted fishing. I'm just not out here trying to catch whatever bite. I'm going for the big guy. I want, Harvey Wallbanger, the big guy in the organization. So that's who spear fishing. And many times they're not targeting executives. What spear fishing many times target is the executives, their personal assistants, people in their circle, because they have access. Their accesses allow a hacker to gain access to the big guy. The quid pro quo. You do this for me, I do something for you. You do this for me, I will do something for you. All right? That's how quid pro quo works. Baiting. Actually, this is a huge one because this is where, let's just leave a thumb drive laying out, and see, and because curiosity, well, I want to know what's on that. So I'm going to plug it in, and when I do, now I've downloaded some type of virus or whatever it may be. Pre-texting, another one. This is where what I call shadowing, where we can try to gain advantage to gain some type of control over individuals. Same with vishing, which is via text. Tailgating is a big one as well, where people will follow you in after they open the door for you. If you open the door, let them in, whatever. So those are some of the common social engineering techniques. Now, but at the heart of social engineering, it isn't so much the techniques, it's the psychology. And we're going to talk about this a little bit more in more detail on the next slide. But it's we look at the stages of social engineering, right? So it's talking about, one, you're going to select a victim. So that's it. And really that's at the heart of how to select a victim. And then you're going to research that victim. Find out as much as you can. That's what the hackers are doing. Doing the research on that victim to find out what they like, what they don't like, what church they go to, who's their favorite sports team, whatever it may be. Do that research, and then from that research, they're able to develop some type of relationship. Once you develop the relationship, then the goal, and this is a false relationship, because the goal now is to exploit that relationship to gain access. So when we drive to this a little bit deeper, really social engineering is based on kind of one thing in particular: trust. Yes, it really comes down to trust, where the individual is trying to gain or trying to establish a trust relationship. And to do that, like I said, it starts with, pretexting. That's why we're trying to develop a trustworthy identity. A social engineer is going to combine your personal information, the context, with their goals. Meaning now, this kind of goes to that step one. I need to find the right victim. And now I can start developing that relationship, where I know that you're a sports fan. I know that your kids go to this particular private school. I know so many things about you that now I can start developing on that pretextual mantra, some type of relationship with you. And to do that, I have to start looking at some of the different types of what we call psychological influences. These psychological influences, so this is just some examples of what those influences could be. Does it make sense for this person to reach out to me? Does this person behave in a trustworthy manner? These are things that we, as humans, naturally, questions that go through our mind when we meet someone new, right? Does this person have authority? They may be in the organization at a higher rank than I am, or a higher grade. Do they understand the topic we're discussing? Those are some questions. So now the social engineer, their job now is to answer all these questions. So in your mind now, as the victim, you have positive feelings that, yeah, okay, it makes sense because he's a Dallas Cowboy fan and I'm a Dallas Cowboy fan and we love talking about football. So yes, this relationship makes sense. Does this person behave in a trustworthy manner? Well, yeah, they're speaking the same language as I am, and not just physical language, but their attitude, their persona is a type of person that I would let into my circle. Okay. Do they have authority? Meaning that this individual may be someone in an organization who I'm perceiving to be at a higher level. They have some type of authority. They may be or in IT and help desk. Okay, I guess they know what they're talking about because they work at the help desk. That's what I'm thinking. So that's what this psychological influences are, is where now the social engineer is able to use that art of manipulation to set up this trust environment. And then the last part is that now they want to build a rapport, some type of rapport. The goal is to establish a human connection. As you see, up to this point, it has very little to do with technology. We are really now trying to establish a human connection and reciprocity, some type of reciprocity bond, meaning that we've got a good connection now. Now, when I ask, hey, can you do this for me? Because now, when I ask or when I approach, you almost feel compelled. You've done all this for me, so yeah, I guess I do. Oh, yeah, okay, all right, I can do this one thing for you. Reciprocity between the social engineer and the target. And that's what they're usually shooting for. So when you look at that, so now when I have pretext, I have influence, I've built rapport, now I've established what? Trust. Now there is a level of perceived, it's not real trust, perceived trust by the target. The social engineer isn't trusting anyone except themselves. But so now when I have trust, now in a position that I can, set you up and you can become even more socially engineered. So when you think social engineering, it is one of those things that we have to always be aware when people come in and out of our environments. Especially if you happen to work somewhere that's in a bank, or you work for the federal government or state or local government, because now you have access. You may work for a defense contractor that builds weapon systems. Even though you may think, well, look, I'm just a low-level engineer or a supply technician or whatever, doesn't matter. You have access. You are able to get into the building. That alone, puts you at the top of the list among most other people who can't even get in the building. You have a badge. So the fact that your position may feel like, well, I'm pretty low in this organization, so why would anybody target me? You are the perfect target because you feel like you're not a target. So that is why, understanding pretext, influence, rapport, developing trust or perceived trust are the keys to how a social engineer, how a hacker is going to exploit some type of relationship. So when we think about that now, we want to look at how do we train for that. So really a big part of what we're going to, of this whole thing is really training, is having a trained workforce. Okay. Now there's some keys to training, and these are my personal notes. Actually, I didn't pull this from anywhere else, and it's not part of the curriculum. This is just from many, many years of experience. Over 40 years. Yeah, I guess it is over 40. Over 40 years of experience between the military, the federal government, DOD contractors, where I've worked around, that I've seen. So when we think about training, your organization's training is only as good as your organization's policies. Okay? Meaning that no matter what I put in my training, if it's not undergirded with policy, then that training isn't worth the PowerPoint slide or the paper that it's written on. Because if I don't have some type of enforcing function or some type of way to enforce that based on policy, then it's useless. But that's not all. Your company's policies are only as good as its leadership. If you want your security awareness training to really be effective, it has to start at the top down. Trying to push a security cultural mindset change from the bottom up is very difficult. It's like trying to push a wet noodle up a hill. You don't make a lot of traction with that. So it has to be leadership based. Okay, your training you have to have buy-in from the leadership. Leadership at all levels, from your local leadership or your direct leadership, mid-manager, all the way to the top to senior leaders. The C-staff in your organizations have to buy into this training. So now, for them to buy into the training, have to buy into policies. And so when we think about that, let's take a look at what a well-defined policy many times will contain, okay? Kind of broke this down. If you're having to look at policy or develop policy, and trust me, this is difficult. This is an area that most people in IT, cybersecurity, technical related career fields do not want to do. I do not want to sit and write policy. I want to sit in front of my Splunk, Nessus, and I want to run scans, and I want to do Metasploit and all these other fancy things. Writing policy? Are you kidding me? No. But here again, it all hinges on your policy, your training, the culture of your organization with respect to security, with respect to protecting personally identifiable information. It all hinges on some of these. So when we think about policy, you have to start with a purpose. Why? I ask the question, why am I writing this? Because this is going to set the tone, no kidding, for why am I wasting my time writing this policy? Because if you can't answer that question up front, the rest of it is going to be a bunch of boilerplated gibberish, okay? So now that we've identified the purpose, I'm writing, this policy is in place to ensure that the training that we develop and present is effective at mitigating risk associated with exploitation of personal data or whatever it may be. That's a pretty good sentence. I got to remember that one. Now you got that. Now we can look at the scope. Scope. How wide? Who is this policy impacting? Is it just our organization? Is it other organizations? Is it just a subcomponent of our organization? Now we know the scope of who it reaches. And then the actual policy itself. So what's the basic objectives, and the description of the guidelines? What is this policy going to, now I can actually start putting pen to pad and writing that. Also, this is a big one, accountability. How can we hold people accountable? Which goes back to our leadership. Meaning, I can have all the policies and restrictions and all these things in place, but if I don't have some type of way of holding the workforce accountable when they break, when they don't follow the policy, then again, policy is not worth the PowerPoint slide that it was created on. Okay, contacts. Oh, in the event that there's something that goes wrong, who do I contact in the organization? That's always a question. Well, who is the person responsible? It's kind of the RASI thing. Who's responsible? Who's accountable, right? Who's consulted and who's informed? So understanding that piece. Then references. So here again, our training and our policy is to reference any other policies, any higher level policies, corporate level policies that may exist. So all these pieces fit together so that now your policy makes sense from the top to the bottom to the top. Also, something very important that many times we fail to do. Versioning. What about version history? You want to be sure that when individuals read your policy or your training or whatever it may be, they know they are reading the most current version. One of the things that I started doing where I work, when we build training or even PowerPoints, right? I'll put a slide in there and I'll hide the slide for versioning. This is 2022 V1, version 1, version 2, version 3. That way we know you have a running tally or a list of the versions, what's been changed in each one, so it makes it much simpler now when it's time to update that, and you know which copy is floating around out there within your organization. So again, training based on policy, policy based on leadership. And these are some things to remember when we talk about how to develop a well-written policy. So some of the other topics, like I say, not just with social engineering, but some other topics you may want to consider when you develop training, right? Security awareness training. Account management. Guys, I will tell you, this is probably one of the biggest areas in cybersecurity. Account management. It's not the technical side of account management. It's not our IT guys, going into Active Directory and setting up accounts or Centrify or whatever, Linux tool you may be using. This is the administrative part, okay, like password management. How do you protect your passwords? How do you protect all your authenticators? What's your lockout policy? If I fat fingered it 3 times, does it lock out? If it locks out, how does it reset? Those are some things that you really want to be able to articulate to your workforce so that they understand that. How to protect information in media. Media labeling, media marking. Do I have the right classification? Those are things that also I always wanted to train. How do I protect data at rest or data in motion? Should it be encrypted? Should BitLocker be turned on? Those types of things. Okay, there's technical implications, but again, when we train our workforce, these are administrative things that can make the difference in your organization with respect to cybersecurity, with data security, information security. Hardware, software restrictions. Do you have any type of warning banners in your organization that should be on and why they're there? Any type of classification? And your company may have, proprietary or most private. Or if you're in the DoD, you could have classified, unclassified, secret, top secret, whatever it may be. So other things to look at, when you train is and this has to do with insider threat with respect to tailgating. What is the security mechanisms in place? For your badges, do you swipe in? Who's allowed to come in? Is tailgating authorized? The big area, restricted use items, personal electronic devices, PEDs, we call them PEDs, medical devices. Who's authorized to bring certain things into your workspace? And then, of course, you always want to do training on incident response, things like data spills, how to recognize data spills, and how to report incidents when they happen. So not only are we talking about training the workforce with respect to things that have to do with protecting our data and our information, but we also want to protect them from some of the physical and administrative things in this environment. A lot of things, and this is just a snapshot. There's many other things that you want to, and you want to make that training targeted to your organization. Not just go grab a template from somewhere else, but tailor that training to your organization based on the business of your organization. So now when you're developing training, one of the things we'll look at training resources. Are you going to do this in-house? And do you have in-house tools, in-house resources? You may not have a training team to build your security awareness training. So you may look outside, some different outside services. There's quite a few organizations like KnowBe4, CyB, InfoSec, Inspired eLearning. These are just some external resources that you can use and that can help you set up a training program, not just from a awareness perspective, but also from a train the hands perspective. And I know many organizations where we work, and many other organizations now they run phishing tests. They do social engineering tests to see if someone's going to click on a link. Now, if they do, all you're going to get is a big X up on the page. And you go, oh, you shouldn't have done that. Now you're going to have to do some remedial training. I think SNHU, our school, they run the same thing. If you clicked on a link in a text or an email, and it's probably from one of these organizations or some others, that now you get the little smack the back of your hand. You shouldn't have done that. But so if you set up training, these are some resources that you could use. All right, guys. So in summary, when we think about what we talked about, we're going to cover in week 5. Like I said, we looked at our module assignments. We really talked about social engineering and how trust really is at the core, at the heart of social engineering. Training from security awareness training, some of the resources that are associated with that, and how to establish training. All right, so this week, again, week 5, man, we are over the hump. We are moving toward the end of this class, the end of this term, at an alarmingly fast rate. So guys, again, have a great week 5. Please don't hesitate to reach out. A lot of assignments are coming due. Again, just a reminder, give it your all, take your time, slow down, follow the rubric. You can't go wrong when you follow the rubric. All right, have a great week 5. Take care.